all the discussion is Max da GOAT? Is he the greatest of all time at featherweight? If you look at what he's done, it's pretty impressive. Now, the majority of that work in terms of the numerical wins happened prior to claiming the title, but since then he beat Jose Aldo twice. Now, he did lose to Poirier, of course, but that was at 155. He beat Brian Ortega. He beats Frankie Edgar, for 2 wins over Aldo, then Ortega, then Edgar. That is quite the resume.
And you consider 14 wins in a row at featherweight. That's 100%. That can't be left.
It's pretty amazing. Here's what I would say about that, though. I think the discussion's kind of silly. The division is so young. You've got 3 people who have ever held the title, and one of those never even defended it. Now, his resume is pretty good, too, right? He beat Poirier down there. He beat Max down there. He KO'd Aldo down there and a bunch of other stuff as well. He had a nice run at featherweight, too. Like, this is all to say, is Edgar's run at featherweight worthy of respect? Yes. Is Max's? Yes. Is Aldo's? Yes. Is Connor's? Yes. But like greatest of all time, I'm not saying we can't.
Well, I mean, it's the hot take era.
I'm not saying we can't arrange them a little bit in our mind. But when you talk about the greatest of all time for a division that is, not, it's just so. Look, I've been covering MMA longer than there's been a featherweight division.
You nailed it. We do podcasts, we do radio shows, we do TV. And we know what it's like to fill segments, to have things to talk about. And we also know maybe how tiresome it's getting, especially in a sport in MMA where it's so young, 25 plus years, and women's MMA when we're talking about Nunes is the greatest of all time, which she is, by the way, but still, it's a little bit ridiculous.
Right.
The sport's been around for, a decade on the women's side, at the highest level. So, yes, with all that said, it is getting a little bit too hot takey to always every week update. Well, does that make this guy the new greatest at this weight class at fights that started at 10 p.m. Eastern? No, it doesn't. But at the same time, Max has the best featherweight legacy. And what this fight ultimately did, Luke, with such a one-sided and technical and brilliant win over Frankie Edgar, who still had it at 37, despite this guy right here having my own doubts.
Yeah, boy.
Max is freaking unflappable, all right? Freaking unflappable. You remember 2018, where people were fearing for his health. I was one of those people fearing for his health.
Yep.
And I feel like every time we have a question about him, he raises his game to that higher level, and we certainly had at least some question coming off the Poirier loss.
So the interesting part about that is you'll note at the post-fight press conference, they were asking him, okay, are you going to fight Volkanovski at the show 243 down in Australia? And his answer was, look, hold your horses. I got to get some medical tests done. And I believe I'm told by his manager that he's out, I think, doing that today in Las Vegas. So here's the deal.
Would that be the 13th island, by the way, though? I know you don't like this type of talk, but...
Australia?
Yeah.
Well, isn't Vegas 9th island, and then Canada is 10th?
I think Toronto.
So it'd be 11th.
Yeah, I'm falling behind.
You're adding a few islands there before you need to. I guess the point being is, I also think, to your point, he wasn't taking his health as seriously as he should have. And I thought that Max would win this, but I also thought, man, coming back from Poirier fight so soon, I didn't see a whole lot of damage. And
I saw nothing, Luke.
Yeah?
I mean, this was the potential perfect trap fight. If you believed in Frankie, which Frankie's got rightfully a large army online of people that, he's one of the more beloved.
I'm sure you heard from them based on your skepticism.
And he's one of the more beloved fighters for a reason
sure.
of these modern times, with the way he fights, takes chances in there, comes back, fights over his head and weight, all that good stuff. But what I said was right. I looked at it more as, for Max, almost a borderline get-well fight. At the same time, though, if you believed in Edgar, it was a trap fight too. And then it's like, throw those narratives away. What we really saw was a guy who's still only 27.
So what you're saying? So what you're saying was, I was right last week and you were wrong.
Well, was I?
A little bit.
Was I? Because let's look at how it played out in the end. To say,
you said it was
I
a
wrong?
get-well fight for Frankie, dude. You just now called it one-sided. I would disagree.
I see people out. I saw people out there on Twitter trying to give him 2 rounds, 3 rounds. I mean, come on.
I think you could score at 50-45, but you should still be able to say the score doesn't reflect how competitive it was.
All right. And me using the word trap fight obviously gets people up in arms, but that doesn't really show you who Frankie is. It shows that in this division, when you had other options like a Volkanovski, when you have other guys rising, the idea of going back to Frankie in this spot, to me, was utilizing his marketability and playing it in a little bit of a get-well role.
Some
not so
of
much
that is true.
Taking a dump on Frankie, but to try to sit here and say I should take this L, it kind of played out exactly like I thought it would play out in the end.
I thought it was pretty competitive.
And yet I still came out of there impressed with both performances. And that's the thing. This was one of those weird fights where Frankie could lose, in my eyes, a one-sided one, and yet elevate himself in the process because he fought so well. The game plan was there. The speed was still there at 37. He just had this sort of physical disadvantages that played out huge in the size difference. And then when it was clear he could not take Max down, he's not going to outbox him.
So one of the issues that Frankie runs into is there's just a lot of tape on him. And at 37, you're not really, you can make some tweaks to how you compete, but you can't make the big ones. And his skill set relative to Max, where Max can, I did a whole thing on this on Dissected. You know, Max can stand southpaw or orthodox. He can circle either direction. He can build a game plan exactly as he needs to based on this incredible modularity in the striking game, which frankly most people, hardly any, have. Frankie's a very good striker and a very good wrestler, but the wrestling, as we saw, got shut down, and the striking's good. But I think people have seen so much of it, they can really plan around that. And you saw the team that he has behind him, Max Holloway, with Ivan Flores, they did a great job with it. But I gotta say, I came out of that thinking, and this is where I want to take the next part of this discussion, I know Frankie doesn't want to necessarily go to bantamweight. He just seems like he's unsure about it. I think it'd be a great idea. Years ago, Brian, his coach, Mark Henry, unsolicited, called into my SiriusXM radio show and said, and this was, I think he was still at 155 at the time, and he was like, you guys know he can make 135. We were like, oh, no way. I think not only he can make it, at 37, he sees it as like, well, I didn't succeed at featherweight, it's a departure. No, it is a testament to that. If you can have a successful campaign at lightweight, which he did, he didn't win a title at 145, but he's been a pretty damn
fought for the title 3 times to get to that point consistently.
Yeah, absolutely strong count of himself. And going to 135 when it's hot right now, fresh matchups, you never know. It would tell me that you can be competitive against 3 weight classes, particularly on the lighter side. Dude, you would be doing this stuff. He's already a legend. This would be another layer to it.
We learned in this fight that from an elite standpoint, he still got it. He still got it very much. He just fought a Max who's, again, not to go too much on hyperbole, but it's starting to show you that he's building a case to be an all-time great. And Max is only 27, so it's mind-boggling how much he's done, how good he is. Frankie showed you he still got it, but the idea of, well, should he go? My question is, he really has no other choice, because if he stays at featherweight, he's not going to win a title, and yet he's almost still too good to enter completely into that graduation that fighters do, where you just become an old name, and you sit around, and maybe you'll get one more big fight, maybe you'll just match your old name with another old name, and then if you hang around long enough, they start feeding you to the young guys on the way up, and that's the sort of exit system in this food chain. He's still good enough where it's sort of like, if you can make 35, do it. Because the chances he used to take at lightweight in doing that, sure, he would have the advantage of speed, but the chances that he would take relying on his toughness, you can't take at 37. And when your speed is knocked down a bit, obviously because of age and all that, I don't know what else he's going to do. He's not going to go to lightweight where it's all killer, and he's already been there, and staying around at featherweight, you're just going to be another guy in some cases. So it's more like, if you still have it, and he does, and you still want to do it, and he does, and that was a very emotional interview you gave, and it's hard not to love him 20 times over when he gives that type of emotional interview afterwards. You got to do it, bro. You got to go down to 35. There's nothing left for you.
Last question, how did you score the fight?
4 rounds to 1.
4 rounds. Which one did you give Frankie?
I gave Frankie, a lot of people were giving him the first. I didn't. I gave him the third. I thought he really sort of changed a little bit of the momentum of the fight there.
Okay, first round I could see, I didn't give it to him, but I could see a case for it. I went back and I watched this fight probably 50 times. There is no case to give him the third round, none. Now, understand, scoring in real time is harder. Going back after the fact, looking at stats, that's not really scoring. It's not revisionist history, but it's just so much more accurate than what people have at their leisure to begin with. But you go back and look at that. He outstruck Edgar numerically, which is not the same thing as qualitatively, but numerically, almost 2-1. He rocked him in that, and you got the takedown, but he didn't do hardly anything with it.
See, I thought Edgar had his longest sustained success in the third round, where the first round was a little bit even, back and forth, a lot of trading. Yeah. I thought Edgar had a good minute and a half, 2 minutes where he completely controlled that fight.
It's the Max Kellerman question. Who would you rather be when the round was over? You'd much rather be Max. I actually think no one's picking up on this. The fourth round was the one that was really dicey to me. You could very much score that for Frankie Edgar. I was surprised people didn't, but anyway, I think he'll go to bantamweight. I think his advisors will push him in that direction, and I think he'll be very competitive, and I think he'll get some big fights, and I think he's going to get a title shot with just 1 or 2 victories down there.
It's crazy for a guy to reach legend status, and we've never seen him fight at what would amount to be his natural weight.
Class.
We don't know if that'll be his best weight, but it would be where he'd have the most physical advantages. It's interesting.